Welcome back to Number One Comic Books. My name is Tom, and this video is going to be fun. At least I hope it's fun. It's going to be fun for me, as I thought, why not put together a list of my top 10 favorite comic book covers of all time. Now, I will give you a spoiler alert. You're going to see a lot of Spider-Man in here, but I guarantee you there's going to be some covers that you're like, what in the world? Maybe even one or two that you didn't even know existed. And some of these I can't even tell you why they are favorites. I can just tell you that they are. They've always drawn me in. I'll give you a little bit of backstory on each, but I won't take up too much time. And if you stick around through each one, I'm going to have a little side note. Some of it's like fun facts or other little history of the book that you might find interesting. So stick around and let's get to it. All right, coming in at number 10 in my list, and this has got to be on a lot of folks' list, we're going to go back to 1963. Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby collaborate on a cover, and you may have guessed it. Yes, it is Marvel Comics, The Amazing Spider-Man #1. Comic book historians would probably all have this in their list as well. It's just such a cool cover. I remember as a kid seeing this, I'm assuming the reprint somewhere, and just the look of Spider-Man being held captive and the Human Torch flying around and that kind of fire line behind him and the Fantastic Four looking up. It just is something from childhood all the way till today. I just always look on that cover as one of my favorites, hence why it's made the top 10. I mean, just such cool artwork as you would imagine from Ditko and Kirby. And to give you the little bit of a side note on this book, or the fun fact, did you know the events of this story are expanded upon in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 1.1 in 2014. So all that time went by, and then in 2014 we actually got a little bit of backstory as to what was going on in this book. All right, next up on my list, number 9. It's also Marvel Comics. This one we're going to jump a year ahead. We're going to go to 1964. Unfortunately, Jack Kirby's not on this cover, or didn't help draw this cover, but we have Steve Ditko once again. This is Spider-Man once again, The Amazing Spider-Man number 13. As every single one on this list, something I remember as a kid. I just love the look of Mysterio and Spider-Man. The additional panels, you kind of have a comic book page, but on the front cover. And just, I think, the way that they show Spider-Man shooting the webs and Mysterio is dissolving them, I've just always loved the way that looks. And Mysterio and his cloud of smoke there, just so cool. Well, obviously one of my favorites, but just love this artwork. And the fun fact here is, did you know that this cover actually was one of 32 covers that appeared in the Spider-Man video game way back in 2000. I think I had that video game. I'm sure I played it, but I would not have known that. All right, guys, number 8 on my list. This time we're going to go to DC, and we're going to jump quite a few years ahead, 1973. Now, our first book was Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. Our next book was just Steve Ditko. The cover artist on this one is just Jack Kirby. And this one is DC's The Demon #7. In some ways, I don't even know what draws me. Of course, just the artwork of Jack Kirby. I just love the look of these characters, of the Witch Boy with kind of powers coming out of his fingertips, and the demon, being struck. The demon logo itself, too, just the word The Demon. I just love the look of it, kind of with the fire behind it. It just almost has a raw look to it, but it's just so compelling to me. The interesting fact that I found around this book as I was digging around was that actually this is taking place in Gotham City. So as you can imagine, down the road, we actually see the Demon teaming up with Batman quite a few times. All right, moving on to number 7. This is kind of exciting. Number 7 is right here in the room with me. Ever since I started this channel, I've had Daredevil behind me. And that is number 7 on the list, Marvel Comics Daredevil number 187. This is a Frank Miller cover. I love Frank Miller. He is probably nowadays, at least when I record this video, his big one is that Wolverine cover that everybody is going crazy over. But Frank Miller, what a history of fantastic covers. Or actually, the publication date was October 1, 1982 on this book. And I'm going to have to read you the little fun fact here, and I'll tell you why I picked this. But did you know? In this issue, the ninja villain Kirigi is reanimated and his body is made whole from his previous decapitation by Elektra. The reason I picked that fun fact was I love ninjas. I've mentioned that in previous videos. I'm digging around for ninja comic books, seeing what I can find out there, but I just thought that was very interesting, and it was ninja related, a win-win. Number 6 on my list of my top 10 favorite comic book covers of all time. We're going to go back to DC, publication date, May 31st, 1980. This is a cover by Jim Starlin. This just catches my eye. I don't own this cover, or I don't own this comic book, but I will, I can tell you that. The House of Mystery number 281, probably primarily because I'm a fight fan. I just like the look of the alien boxer, and he's, clocking the human boxer in the jaw. The coloring here, kind of the use of that big red circle in the background just really draws your eye to the fighters. You can kind of see some blurry crowd in the background. You've got some angry crowd in the forefront. You got the referee who's kind of stunned in the background. Everything about it, the House of Mystery logo, kind of the jagged, gives you the scary feel to it. Love the cover. Jim Starlin knocked this one out of the park. And did you know, for this one I'm going to take Jim Starlin himself, that he actually was responsible for 208 Marvel covers and 91 DC covers. And I just stopped at Marvel and DC. I don't know how many other companies that Jim worked with, but he did a heck of a job on this one. We enter the top 5, and I could give you 1,000 guesses of what this next cover was going to be, and I don't think anybody would guess. I mean, you'd be thinking the traditional comic book covers that everyone has in their top 10, top 100 that you see online. This one is the only one that makes the list from Charlton Comics. I actually own this book, even though it's got a big tear on the front cover, and I don't know how it ever came to be. This was published in June of 1976, and it is Creepy Things number 6. I just remember this as a kid. It was either at my grandparents' house, my uncle had a copy, or my parents somehow had a copy. I don't even know how I came to really get it, but I just remember it as a little kid, and it was creepy. It just was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to this poor mom and child on the ground? There's this huge spider coming in the window. It creeped me out. It just got very kind of like pale coloring, and then the big Creepy Things logo sticks out. And then you got the little Charlton Comics demon or whoever he is. I should have looked that up, but up there in the top left-hand corner. But this just, it's etched in my memory from a child. And this cover was drawn by Mike Zeck, who was probably better known for the things he did with Marvel. And actually, Mike originally was on this list a second time until I really started paring things down. And then one of his covers, which you may know, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 8, shows a Spider-Man in the black symbiote suit. That was Mike Zeck. But that's not the fun fact, and unfortunately this one's not a fun fact. Creepy Things number 6 is the final book in the series. So at some point, I probably will try to get 1 through 6, get the full series, just for historical purposes, and just to kind of relive a little bit of my childhood. All right, as we embark on number 4, buckle up for a heavy dose of Spider-Man. Number 4 is Marvel's Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 7. This was released on June 1st of 1977. Cover by Dave Cockrum and Al Milgrom. Just that shot of Morbius in the background. That lady just has a total look of fear in her face as Spider-Man is rescuing her, or presumably taking her away, saving her from Morbius. Just that face and those pink eyes of Morbius, I guess really scared me a little bit as a child. He just looked so fearsome. But another one, just kind of like Creepy Thing. I have this in my head from my childhood, and I have a copy of this book as well, and it's just one of those ones that as time goes on, I think this list will change. But books like Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 7 and Creepy Things number 6 will probably always make my top 10. And as I mentioned, this book was released in 1977, but did you know that Morbius' first appearance was in another Spider-Man book many years before? Well, not many, about 6 years before that. Amazing Spider-Man number 101 from 1971. What was that old Saturday Night Live skit? With Christopher Walken, I have a fever, and the only cure is Spider-Man.
Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
Well, we've got more Spider-Man here. Coming in at number 3, Marvel Comics Marvel Team Up, number 46, featuring Spider-Man and Deathlok. Another book I own. I actually think I have a couple copies of this one. This was released June 10, 1976. Artwork on the cover done by Rich Buckler, Mike Esposito, and Irving Watanabe. I'm a Deathlok fan. I'm a Spider-Man fan. This brings the best of both worlds. Such an action-packed cover. Spider-Man trying to shoot the webs and get the gun away. Deathlok trying to hold Spider-Man off, shooting the gun. You have the explosion of the wall behind Spider-Man. I just love this cover, like all of these, but this one has a special place in my heart. And again, one I remember as a kid very, very vividly. And our fun fact with this book is that this is actually supposed to be taking place in 1990. And it's actually supposed to be taking place between the events of Astonishing Tales number 36. Only 2 more to go. Believe it or not, number 2 is not Spider-Man. However, let's go back to the previous book. Hey, this one is Deathlok. Released on August 10, 1974. This is Marvel Comics' Astonishing Tales number 25, featuring Deathlok the Demolisher. In a previous unboxing video that I just released, I purchased this book, a reader copy of the book, but this one here I can't say that I necessarily remember from my childhood, but ever since I can remember, I just love the coloring of this cover, the look of Deathlok. You have the scared people. Deathlok looks like he's kind of ripping out of his restraints. You have electricity flowing. I love the logo, and you've got kind of a Punisher feel to the O and the logo with the scope. This was a tough one because it almost made number 1 on my list. It didn't. So what is number 1? Well, you're going to find out in a second, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this cover artwork was done by, or actually the pencils were Rich Buckler, who we just mentioned in the previous one, and then inks were by Klaus Janson, who again, I'm a big Klaus Janson fan. But our fun fact for this one as well, and I got to read through this one. Though other dates aren't mentioned in this issue, the present day setting of the story is eventually set as 1990. Look at that. Deathlok had a busy 1990. All right, and let's get to number 1. I will ask you, if you made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I need all the help I can get. And if you don't want to subscribe, at least give me the thumbs up. It would mean a lot. So, my number 1 most beloved cover of all time. It is a Spider-Man cover, and it's a big one. In fact, it's so big that it's giant size. This cover was done by the phenomenal Gil Kane. This book was released July 10, 1974. And yes, if you haven't guessed it by now, it is Marvel Comics' giant-sized Spider-Man and Dracula number 1. I'm continually on the lookout for a good copy of this book. I might even buy a reader and then at some point get a CGC graded, but I'm just looking for the right deal and the right timing. But this cover is just fantastic. I love the way you've got kind of Dracula looming over the entire cover. You got Spider-Man in his web. You got the Human Torch down on the left, who's also a big part of this book. You got Spider-Man up in the top left. Dracula, the little logo up in the top right. I just like the way they have the yellow Spider-Man text, and then you have Dracula inside the bat. It's just everything about this cover. I mean, the coloring is great. It's got that horror feel to it. I just love it. I don't know what else to say about it. That's why it's number 1 on my list, and I can't wait to get a hold of this. I've never owned it, but I will soon. I can tell you that. So we'll share an unboxing video down the road where hopefully I'm pulling this book out. Obviously, I have to mention with all of the kudos to this book. So the fun fact here was I went a little bit off the beaten path here, so it doesn't have anything to do with Dracula or Spider-Man. Instead, we're going to focus on Human Torch. And without ever reading this book, I cannot confirm or deny this, but just bear with me because this was what was online. And it stated that the Human Torch picks up the trail of the jewelry store robbery in Marvel Team-Up number 23, meaning that there's some sort of a robbery in this book. And then later on in Marvel Team-Up number 23, Human Torch picks up the trail of the robber. So when I get this book, then maybe I have to get Marvel Team-Up 23 after that. You never know. But anyway, that'll do it, guys. That is my top 10 most favorite covers of all time. Let me know if any of these covers are in your top 10, or you don't have to give me a whole 1 through 10. Just what is your favorite cover of all time? I would really be interested to know. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Number One Comic Books and taking time out of your day or night to watch one of my videos. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time.